won't blame you if you can't pick a favorite. SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader.
Now, Ruahan Naude is an optometrist and CEO of Dynamic Vision and practicing at Dynamic Vision, East Rand Mall optometrist. He joins us now to talk about how poor vision can affect a child's learning ability. Ruahan Naude, hello, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Now, I just thought it takes a while to discover whether you have an eye problem or not. And this I found very interesting to know that as early as 6 months already, you can detect whether a child has a problem, a visual problem or not.
Very much so. Babies definitely do not know what they can see and what they can't see, but we also need to take into account the hereditary problems from the parents. And therefore, it's good to have a baby's eyes checked even at 6 months because it's a very quick test. And looking at the reflection of the eyes with certain instruments, you can very much so predict or find what the problem is and prevent a lot of issues later on. So the biggest risk if they have a eye problem is when they're very much farsighted, and therefore any close work or any close activities they cannot see, and they develop a lazy eye, which is very hard to fix later on.
And again, I thought, just as a lay person, that whenever you shine a light on a child's eyes, especially a baby as little as 6 months, they're not going to focus. So how do you manage to see that they're just not reacting to a bright light, or just as part of their growing phase?
Yes, I think a layman won't be able to see that. It's a very interesting instrument that we use called a retinoscope. We can actually have a look at the reflection. Mm-hmm. And as long as the baby can focus on a specific point, which would usually be the mom standing behind you, you can actually get a very clear indication whether there's a prescription or not.
So how do parents, and I'm staying at that baby age for a reason, how do parents even notice or other signs, apart from bringing the child to you first, other signs or other things that parents can do to stimulate the child's vision as between the age of birth and 6 months?
That is a very difficult question because, you need to look at the natural activity of a baby, So, I think if you just follow the basics. So first of all, when the baby's born from very young age, they actually follow the mom all the time, and they actually follow the mom's breast because that's where food comes from. And then the second point is their finger. So, just to be doing normal activities, what the baby would require to do will be fine. The point is you just need to determine, though, whether they can see or not, and that's going to be very difficult for the parents to see. So definitely if one of the parents or any of the grandparents have an eye condition, specifically hypermetropia or being farsighted, definitely they would need a screening. And it's not really a long test. What is more easier to determine is when children are in the ages of 3 to 4 or 5 is to actually see the signs at that time. And that's simple, when they kind of close their eyes, where they don't like bright light or they have certain positions and squinting and so on. So maybe a good indication is to look at photographs of babies thinking about it. When you see one of the eyes are closed or they could squint, which you can pick up on photographs, particularly when there was a flash. That could be an indication. Otherwise, on babies, it's very difficult. Children are far more easier.
Now, we often discover this when the child has already started school, and 9 times out of 10, you're not thinking it's the eyesight that is a problem. You're thinking maybe the teacher's not good enough to teach them, when they cannot quite write what they're learning. So what are the telltale signs to look for between the ages of that 6 months, if they haven't come to an optometrist, until they start school?
Yes, well, when they're very young, have a look at how close they hold the book towards them. So when there are any activity, so when a baby wants to look at something and you're pointing it to them on that age and they sit very close to it, that is a sign. When they're a little bit older, probably when they're reading a book or they're having an activity, probably an iPad at the moment, sitting too close to a television set, red eyes, when they're a little bit older, complaining of sore eyes or headaches. These are all a kind of signs. An interesting one when they're around about 4 or 5 is not a definite, but when children prefer to play outside a lot more instead of inside and have any activities in tackling closer work like reading. That could also be a sign.
And I'm interested in you mentioning the iPad, and because I think a lot of us wear glasses today since the introduction of computers. Whether your child has a good eyesight or not, that impacts on their vision, does it not?
Very much so. Research has recently shown that using an iPad causes digital strain due to the blue light emission of LED devices, which is approximately 40 to 60% more than natural light. And that has some eye strain as well. Secondly, we found that children hold iPads a lot closer than the normal reading distances. And if you have to think about it, man was born to use your vision for distance, to go hunting. And now you're actually holding it to do your close work. And with an iPad, it's more closer. And when that happens, there's more eye strain. And you can adapt eventually to become short-sighted when you're older, which means you can't see short or by, which means you can't see far.
That's good for your business, though, is it not, Ron?
Essentially, yes, it is, if I may say so. But we would rather help people to prevent that, because whether there's eye strain or being short-sighted, there's a pro and con on both ways. What I can tell our listeners is that I don't think your child should be spending more than half an hour on an iPad at a time. Because there's a lot of eye strain there. There is also a new coating that's available that you can put on spectacles that reduces this blue light. But I think the point to leave our listeners with is that you do not want your child to spend much time before going to bed watching TV on an iPad, because it keeps the brain activity active for at least another 2 hours, which means you have a problem with children going to sleep, and then or not having quality sleep is probably the right one to do.
Yeah, because the mind is very active, during that phase.
Correct, and through the blue light emission, the mind is actually more active because it's stimulated.
So there's a business case here. Can somebody design a film to cover the iPad, so to make the light less bright or effective?
Yes, I think you can't prevent all blue light, and not all blue light is actually bad. So you need to look at LEDs, lights in your environment, normal lights. Television is a problem, but on an iPad there is a coating that you can actually put on already, which is a liquid coating. It has not been released yet, but would be soon. We do know about it, and we'll release it on our website. But there is an opportunity for that, which is a much cheaper option. However, if you look at the concept of prevention is the cure, not necessarily going for an eye test. If I get back to the point where, if we can assume that we're doing a lot more reading than distance work, or in evolution, more hunting, which we would use the eyes for distance, using a reading or a accommodative support lens can actually relax your eyes so much more and prevent problems later on. And I think that's the point that we actually need to focus on, because prevention is the cure.
So is there a corrective kind of way that when discovered at 6 months or by the time the child goes to school, is there a corrective way of making sure that in their adult lives their eyes have acclimatized, if possible, to the blue light, and they don't have to continue wearing glasses? Or is it fait accompli, when you start wearing them, then it's for life?
No, that's definitely not so. I think that's an old tale story, that when you wear glasses from young, then you're stuck with it, and the more you wear glasses, the worse your eyes get. That's actually not so. Most of the times, if you have a little bit of eye strain as a kid, you can actually prevent that eye strain and eventually grow out of them and not wear glasses in the long term. There are quite a few studies out there showing that when children have a lot of eye strain and do not correct it, they will become short-sighted, which means then you do need glasses to see at distance in the future. So that is absolutely not correct. A lot of the times, it's preventing you from wearing glasses in the long term. So getting back to your question on the business model, giving glasses initially at a young age actually prevents it in a later age, which is not good for our business model.
And what about eating my carrots and feeding my child copious amounts of carrots to improve their eyesight?
Well, carrots contains vitamin A, which in the natural format of carrots is beta-carotene. That helps quite a bit for night vision in that aspect. We just have to differentiate between what can happen medically or pathologically or refractive. So when there's a refractive error, which means the eye is slightly too short or too long and therefore out of focus, carrots is not going to help for that. In the long term of retinal health, yes, supplements are very good, and especially the beta-carotene that's available in carrots, which keeps the eye health good. And in the long term, you want to prevent macular degeneration, which unfortunately for children, the advantages in food there comes from green vegetables such as broccoli and spinach.
Okay, so we really must also eat well while we visit you, just to make sure. And I think really what the rule of thumb here is that all children need to go at least every 6 months or every 12 months to see an optometrist.
Yeah, I wouldn't say if there's a condition available, so there is a refractive error, which is what we're talking about, because that's what optometrists do. We correct the refractive error, and we do screenings for any other problems that could be referred either to a doctor or an ophthalmologist who's an eye surgeon. If they have those kind of problems, I'd say from children 6 months. If they're 6 months old, every 6 months, at least have a eye screening or an eye examination prior to going to school. And from there on, if nothing is wrong with your eyes, at least every 2 years. Should you have a condition, at least yearly.
Okay, so we advise moms, though, in the meantime, especially if your child is active, they must have sunglasses if they're outdoors a lot and those kinds of things?
Very much so. The question you must ask me, what did I do with my children? And my little girl was wearing sunglasses from 6 months because of the harmful rays of UV light. So not only do we protect the retina, which can from UV sun from sunlight, that you can eventually, when you're older, develop cataracts or retinal problems there. It also prevents the cancer forming on the eyelid, which is a very sensitive area, or most sensitive area of the body. So you do want to wear sunglasses when you're outside, even as young as possible.
But those are difficult to find, right? Because mainly at that age, they make these plastic things, and you don't know if they're effective at all. So how do you shop for a good pair of sunglasses for a little person?
Are we talking babies or toddlers?
We're talking all of them, from baby to across the board.
Yes. So I would highly suggest, if you can't find it anywhere else, to pop in your optometrist or any local optometrist would probably give you the best advice, and usually have a frame. On the babies, there's a brand called Baby Bands, and I've seen them in baby shops as well, all over the country, as well as optometry shops. But, a plastic lens will give you some form of protection, of UV protection of sunlight.
Mm-hmm. But baby brands, you said they're called?
Baby Bands for babies.
Okay.
And then, there are quite a few other brands available there, from Polaroid to Ray-Bans out there. But they don't always have to be a brand. As long as they've got the UV coating on it, they can protect you. And and don't forget the basics of wearing a hat or a cap outside in the sun.
Sure. It's difficult. It's expensive to have a child, eh?
It's very expensive.
It's getting very expensive. Okay, Ruahan, thank you so much for your kind advice there, and I'm sure we'll be knocking on your door again when we develop or we find out more about how to protect our children, especially at school, because that's when the problems. And how do you communicate with teachers? Before I let you go, because do you depend on them to tell you that the child is having problems and it's possibly the eyes if you've never been to a check before? How do you make sure that teachers are also aware and are noticing, the difficulties the child is having?
Yeah, I'm not sure what is in the teacher's curriculum, but what the teachers need to, where they get the information from is quite difficult. There are a lot of screening programs out there, a lot of practices go out to schools. But I think, we have to assume that if you have visual problems, you're going to have learning problems. Because if you can't see properly, it's going to be difficult to see what's written on the board, or when you have to look at any reading material, and then that will affect your ability to learn. So when someone is a slow learner or they're not doing well, the first spot is to start with that. Studies have shown that around 60% of learning disabilities are associated with visual problems. So yet again, the teacher will have to educate themselves, have a look if the child is sitting too close to the board or holding the book too close or having red eyes. I think if there's one thing that I want to point out is as soon as children start rubbing their eyes, there's a problem. It's either an allergic reaction or there's eye strain. So that's a very good telltale sign for a teacher.
Ruahan Naude, CEO of Dynamic Vision, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Now that we've told you what to look out for as far as your child's learning, regarding poor vision, when we come back, we're talking about a passion for reading in our youth after this.
Join the conversation on #TopBilling to see why achievers with all the choice in the world choose this country to live in above any other. This Thursday, we're with South Africans who've seen the best of the good life, from the wine valleys of France to the design centres of Italy and the driving pulse of London, yet still decide to build their legacy at home. That's Top Billing this Thursday night at 8. Repeat Sunday at 12:30 on SABC3.
Great stories told by great personalities. SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader.
My guest is a mom of 5 children, has a bachelor's degree in communication science, is passionate about reading and trying to make a difference in the world. Mariam Kasim, hello, welcome.
Hello, Shadow. It's nice to have you on my show.